Hello, Carolyn. How are you?
Okay. I'm in the central part of the city, but I just want to see what's going on the meetings before
Sure.
there's one later for the central.
You'll be an expert by next week.
Well, I have many comments to make about difficulties I have with sidewalks because
Okay.
I use a walker to get around.
Well, we're glad you're with us tonight. I did hit record, so we are recording. I am going to wait probably 1 or 2 more minutes before we officially start, just in case we have any latecomers. But just please do keep in mind that we are recording at this point.
Okay.
Here we got some more people joining. Good evening. If you just joined us, we're waiting about a couple more seconds before we officially start. But thanks so much for joining us this evening. Hi, Marty, you're back. All right, everybody, it's 6:03. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here this evening. My name is Maggie Green. I'm the Media Relations Manager for the City of Kansas City, Missouri. We are here this evening to talk about sidewalks, which we know is a very important topic to residents in all areas of the city. So we're very excited to be here with the project team tonight to spend some time with you all, providing an update on the program and hearing from you about your thoughts and concerns about sidewalks. So I'm going to, introduce our project team. We have this evening a few speakers, so I will be kind of helping to facilitate. We have Uday Manapali, who is our Sidewalk Program Manager with the Public Works Department. I'm going to mute the background noise here. So Uday Manapali is our Sidewalk Program Manager. He's the lead with the Public Works Department. He'll be sharing some information with us tonight. Again, myself, Maggie Green. Mr. John Zimmerman is with Trans Systems. He's one of our project managers on the project team. And you'll also hear from Therese Pendleton, who is on our project communication side of things with Vireo. And then we also have 2 other folks from Vireo, Jackie and Maddie, who will be helping us to help facilitate our chat this evening with the meeting. So before we talk about the details, I did want to kind of provide a overview here of what we'll be talking about. So again, we have folks joining us in. We would ask if you were joining tonight to please keep your mic muted. That way we can minimize our background noise as we're going through our discussion tonight. But we're very excited that you all are here tonight. We will provide sort of a background on the sidewalk program. We also want to share with you the projects, the progress that we've done so far over the last several years. We've been hard at work with many different pieces involving the sidewalk program, so we'd like to share some updates with you. We've also been to a lot of public meetings and discussions and heard a lot of feedback from residents, and so that's really important in informing where the sidewalk program heads. You know, it's been several years since we did our sidewalk roadshow back in 2019. We did a series of public meetings and gathered a lot of input. I know Uday and myself have also been to lots of city council neighborhood meetings, neighborhood association meetings. So we've been sort of around the city to listen about and hear about sidewalks. And so we do want to kind of share what we've learned and heard and why that's important to hear your feedback. We are going to talk tonight just briefly about sort of what's next with the program. We're over the next year working on a comprehensive sidewalk plan. We're at a point in the program where we are looking to how we're going to inform the sidewalk repairs in the future, and your input and your participation will be really important in informing, sort of how we repair sidewalks in the future. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and some next steps there. We'll talk a little bit about a new program with the city called Vision Zero, and that's around making sure our streets are safe for everyone to move around and trying to eliminate traffic crashes in the city. So we'll talk very briefly about that at the end. And then, of course, we'll leave plenty of time for discussion, questions, and answers as we move about the presentation. So really quick, a couple housekeeping items. Please do stay muted unless you're called on to speak. We are recording the meeting and it will be posted and available on the project website. That's kcmo.gov/sidewalks. We'll make sure that information is in the chat for everyone. But if you have neighbors that weren't able to make it tonight or can't make one of our meetings in the future, we will have all of the recordings and all of the videos posted online so that you can rewatch the discussion. Please do feel free to use the chat box during the meeting. So Travis is in there right now kind of typing some notes. So if you have any ideas, questions, concerns, if you have a technical issue, please do feel free to use the raise your hand button or our chat during the meeting so that we can engage with you all and make sure that we're listening to your concerns throughout the meeting. We are going to try to have this meeting be about 1 hour. If we can't get to your question, we do want to hear from you. We do have several additional meetings. There are 3 more meetings that will be very similar in nature, but please also do feel free to reach out to us directly. Both Uday and myself are very responsive, and we talk with residents all the time about various concerns. So we do want to make sure to note that you can always reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. Before we go on, we are kind of curious who's in the audience here. So this is a general city public meeting. This is sort of geared toward the Northland, but we know we have lots of folks on the line. So we would love to learn about who's in the audience, what sector you're from. So pop that in the chat. If you are a resident, if you're part of a neighborhood association or you own a business, if you're city staff, we'd love to learn a little bit more about you. So please do feel free to share that information with us in the chat this evening. With that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague Uday to kind of talk through a little bit about the sidewalk program and the background about the program.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. So just giving you a background of the sidewalk program and where we are. So back in 2017, when the bond was passed, one of the first questions was, how are we going to address with the bond money which was passed? So streets, bridges, and sidewalks were the 3 main criteria of this. And over the span of 20 years, we were looking at 150 million. That's what the city has identified. So prior to 2017, if anyone reported a 311, the city would have done the repairs, but we would have assessed it to the property owners. But with the Geobond passed, the assessment piece of it has been, there is no more assessment eliminated, or there is no more assessment for the property owners until the life of the Geobond. Next slide. So we are, as I mentioned, it's 150 million over 20 years. So and it's almost like 7.5 million per year. And that 7.5 million per year is broadly classified into 2 categories. One is an ADA program. So we have a settlement with Department of Justice to make sure all the ramps around the corners are accessible. So 2.5 million in this program goes to repairing and addressing the accessibility issues throughout the city. So there is a list of corners around intersections, which we keep addressing. So if there is something new, please let us know. We'll add it to the list and we'll address it as we get along. And with the 5 million per year in the sidewalk program, it is classified mainly into 4 different categories. Again, as directed by our city council, our first priority was to finish all the spot repairs, which were 311s reported between 2008 and 2016. We initially started with just addressing that property who reported the 311, but we thought this is not the right idea, and we were addressing any issue within that block. So we are continuing to do that. Overall, we have like 350 blocks. Each block is an intersection from one intersection to another on both sides of the street if sidewalk exists. And we are around 250 to 280 as of today, which we have completed. We anticipate, based on the current funding, in the next couple of years, by 2025, all these backlog will be addressed. Moving forward, like what are we going to do after we address the backlog? I'll address that in a later stage, but we are going to move with a maintenance priority. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But when we passed the bond, the city didn't have an inventory of where the sidewalks are, what are the conditions. So we have done a lot of inspections, and we are continuing to do that. We almost did like 1,000 centerline miles of sidewalk inspections to know the condition of them. So we are going to continue to do that until we inspect the entire city. There is also a Payet match fund. I'm not sure if everyone heard about Payet. Payet is a public infrastructure advisory committee. So each year from the sales tax, 1% of it goes throughout all council districts, and each council district has a pool of projects which they can fund. It's usually around $4 million per year, which is in the public right of way. So anyone can submit the application, and once it is reviewed, it is funded, projects are done. And the last one is special initiatives. So we started two pilot programs. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Next slide. So right now we are just looking at repairing the sidewalks on a spot repair program, which is like anyone who reported between 2008 and 2016, and we anticipate this to be completed by 2025. Next slide, please. So have you heard about the pilot programs? If you have, you can put it on the chat. If not, I'll just give you an overview. One of the program was, so as of today, if anyone reports an issue with the sidewalk, we just remove and replace it. It is a good practice, but if you are looking at the entire city, we won't be able to reach the entire city, fixing all the sidewalk issues. So what we have come up with is we are trying to use some low-cost techniques, and that is the picture which shows you there was a tripping hazard before, and then we used a specialized technique where we cut this concrete and make sure it is ADA compliant, but also remove the tripping hazard. So it's almost like 8 times the return of investment compared to replacing them, which is like twice. So this is one of our pilot projects. And the next pilot project, Maggie, if you want to the next. Yeah. We have a lot of trees, especially in older neighborhoods. And lot of sidewalk issues are because the trees heave the sidewalks. So previously we had only 2 options: either go around the tree or kill the tree. We necessarily don't want to kill the tree, but we also want to make sure we don't create hazardous path. So we have partnered with UMKC, University of Missouri, Kansas City, Rubberway, the guys who develop the product, and a construction company, Gunter, and we chose a test location. As you can see, there was a big tree. There's a big tree, and it hit off the sidewalk. So we removed the sidewalk and we poured the rubberized material over the tree. So this is eco-friendly. It allows breathability for the trees, so the trees will be still alive, and then it will also have the opportunity for people to walk near the trees. So this is something we are looking at. We already implemented it. We are going to give an year and see the results from UMKC based on feasibility and sustainability. and we may implement it throughout the city. We don't know yet. So if you like some of the pilot programs and you think your neighborhood might be a good candidate, please let us know either in the chat or email at a later stage.
And I would just add to what Uday was saying to just emphasize sort of the importance of public works and the city trying out and testing out these new materials and new techniques, because I think we're always looking for innovative ways to save costs, to make our repairs go further and longer. And so it's very exciting that this is something that we're able to try out, and we're literally testing it right now. Hope to know more later this summer or fall about what some of these materials are going to be allowing us to do across the city. So just wanted to emphasize that it's something we're very excited about, and definitely open to trying new ideas at the city to make sure that we can repair sidewalks in all areas and overcome some of the challenges like tree roots. But with that, I think we're transitioning to the next section here, over to Mr. John Zimmerman.
Thank you, Maggie. I'm going to talk about the Geobond. It required the systematic sidewalk inspection program, and that was created to improve the equity of the program by using data to prioritize inspection. The city worked with residents and community leaders to develop a list of characteristics to identify the most important sidewalks. By following the best practices of other cities for similar programs, and shaping those to fit Kansas City's unique needs, the final system was adopted. With that in place, the city was able to take the 4,000 miles of sidewalks in the city and classify them to a certain priority level for each sidewalk. Next slide. And the priority characteristics were identified, and they included things like proximity to schools, transit, grocery stores, and other similar locations. But the key to the system is the relative weighting of each of these. That process required careful consideration by the stakeholders and the residents. For instance, sidewalk that is near a community center will provide access to social and health programs for pedestrians and people that use wheelchairs and other mobility devices. And that was given a high importance factor of an 8, as you see on the slide. Sidewalk in a dense populated area was also considered important, but less so than the community center access. So it got a maximum score of 5. All of these characteristics and their weighting were assembled into the city's GIS system to develop the priority for each of the sidewalk segments. Once those were all determined, the sidewalks were then grouped into 5 priority levels, with priority 1 as the highest. The map on this slide and the rating system is on the city's webpage for sidewalks, so you can access it if you have more questions about it. Next slide. The city hired 3 consultant teams to review the sidewalks, the ramps, curbs, and other related items for each of the priorities. The city encouraged the use of innovations to enhance the data collection and to reduce the cost. Some of the field reviews have been completed by reviewers walking the sidewalks and just noting all of the repair needs, but each team came up with a unique way. My team actually used the Segway, which is shown in the picture here, and that's a Segway with equipment attached to it. So as they ride down the sidewalk, it picks up data as far as repairs and bumps, cracks, things like that. Another team used a truck-mounted scanner to scan the sidewalks and create a 3D model of the sidewalk. Another team used a drone-mounted scanner, and both of them took that data back to the office and were able to identify cracks and lips from that data and identify the repairs that are needed. Regardless of how the data was collected, though, all of it was finalized into a consistent format. So we came up with a data protocol for the city's GIS so that when Uday goes through and looks at the data, it's all consistent. And the city required formal quality control checks after the first 25 miles of each of these systems so that it was a consistent product and consistent assessment. And then again, at the end of the data collection, when the data was submitted, there was a formal quality control check to just make sure everyone was on the same page. And that improved the quality of the finished product. Next slide. The goal of the field reviews was to determine where the sidewalk was out of repair. The reviews identified where sidewalks had surface cracks of a 1/4 inch or more. Displacement was also documented for tripping hazards of a 1/4 inch or more. And if it was more than an inch, that was also recorded because that became more of an obstacle than a tripping hazard. Sidewalks with spalling or rough surfaces were also documented. And even though those were the top 3 things we looked for, there were many other items such as ponding, unapproved materials, driveways, retaining walls, landscaping, and other ancillary data that we looked at for sidewalk repair. Sidewalk ramps were reviewed with the same criteria, with a note if the ADA detectable warning was there, if there was a ramp located on the curb return. We also looked for utilities in the ramps and other ramp specific items. So those were reviewed in the field. In addition, curbs for the street were reviewed for condition. Definitely if there was a ponding issue, we recorded that. And finally, trees that were within a few feet of the sidewalk. You saw from Uday's slide just a couple back, trees have a major impact to sidewalks. So the city asked us to identify those that were within the width of the sidewalk area, and then those that were definitely damaging the sidewalk were noted as well. Next slide, please. And at this point, the consultant teams have reviewed all the sidewalks and priorities 1 through 4, and we will review priority 5 sidewalks this year. And the data has confirmed the assumption that the older areas of the city will have the highest percentage of sidewalks and ramps out of repair. In the center part of the city, as you can see on the map here, nearly 45% of the sidewalk ramps have 1 or more repair issues. That doesn't mean those sidewalk ramps have to be removed or replaced, but they have cracks or other issues that have been recorded. And this map shows all of the recorded points of repair needs, and it's available on the KCMO website, and it is interactive, so you can zoom into your street if you want to. Just note that the GIS aerial may not line up with the data exactly. This is normal. This happens when you've got different coordinate systems in play, but you can actually see where on your street or even in front of your house sidewalk repair locations were noted. And that interactive map is part of the public engagement for this program. And now we'll highlight that effort in more detail with Travis.
And really quick, before we turn it to Travis, if I could just add really quick here that sort of the importance of this data collection. Before we had the Geobond sidewalk program, we did not have an inventory of the conditions of the sidewalks. And as you can imagine through John kind of talking through what we're looking at, all of the details, all the nooks and crannies of our sidewalks, that information is critical for us to know how to prioritize our repairs. And so just wanted to mention that in part because of the voters approving the Geobond, we are able to get this inventory of our sidewalk conditions, which is a huge help to us in informing our project list. So I just wanted to add that quickly at the end, but Travis, we'll turn it over to you.
I'm going to add one more thing. Sorry, Travis. There have been a couple of questions that we don't see a lot of spots on the Northland. So you can see on the map, we only covered less than 1/3 of the city so far. So based on the budget we have and based on the time we have so far, we are inspecting in parts. So Northland, everything will be inspected in the next 4 years or so, and remaining part of the city which is not inspected as well. So we are in the process of doing it, but we will have inventory for the entire city.
Maggie, how about, okay, there we go. So we have lots of time to work on this, or there's more time. You can expect more conversation. Maggie and Uday have been to over 50 meetings, talking to people about sidewalks and listening to you all concerns. And so when we had public meetings, there's been phone calls, emails in the chat right now. You can email Uday, his email address is in there when you have issues and concerns. But we've been doing that for a couple of years. On the next slide shows just a bit about some of the comments that we got. So what you're seeing is a sampling, is not intended to be a comprehensive overview of everything that we've heard, but we just wanted to pull out some things. Really, when we were going through our engagement effort a couple of years ago, there were a lot of questions about, are we talking about continuous repair for all the neighborhood sidewalks? Are we doing spot repair? People already saw some of the spot repair work happening in their neighborhoods, and so they had some questions about that at that time. Uday and Maggie talked about, right now we've got a pilot program that has to do with what to do with the trees and the sidewalks. And at the time when we were doing engagement, we had community members who brought photos to the meeting about how the trees are impacting some of the sidewalks. And sometimes it's about removing the tree, sometimes it's about just trimming it back. So there were some concerns and questions at that time. We also had questions about where is sidewalk inspection and repair going to happen in relationship to the bond. We heard feedback and comments about getting information out early so that people have lots of time to participate and give their feedback. We keep updating the sidewalk website, and the link to that is in the chat to let people know where we are with the project and try to share our information there as well as having more than one meeting and being available for more meetings when you need them. People were asking about how long the inspection process is going to take, and Uday just outlined that we'll be at this for a few more years. There were comments about whether or not we would have interactive reporting, and so again, that map that John showed and Maggie and Uday were talking about will help with some of that. There were some concern also about when the bond is out, what are we going to do about funding? And I think the slide that Uday showed earlier, which is also on the sidewalk website, helped to address that. Some of the bigger comments and overall concerns that people had to do with how we reach priority and how do we come up with a conversation related to equity as we think about sidewalks. There is activity happening right now in Kansas City with the Parks Department. That's where LifeX comes in. You see in that thought bubble on the bottom right of the screen, it mentions LifeX. That is for the zip codes in Kansas City that we know have an issue with. There's health disparities there. There's also lower life expectancy. And so the not Public Works, but the Parks and Recreation Department received a grant to work on that. And they work with neighborhoods, which also involved UMKC, to do some park-centric plans for those areas to think about how we can improve recreation and improve health outcomes in those communities. At the same time, there's an equity component there because there's concern, why do those zip codes have that issue? So there's a lot of concern about balance and fairness and meeting people where they are. And the community a couple of years ago, and I know people are still interested in it now, really had that equity focus. The comprehensive plan has an equity lens that everything is being looked at. So if you all have been to the mobility or the livability or the serviceability meetings related to the comprehensive plan, you would hear that too. So I think what might make you happy, or maybe give some of you some feeling that we are working with that lens in mind, is what Uday is going to go over with you, is what our next steps are. And they involve equity, but they also involve how priorities will be determined.
Yep. Thank you, Travis. So as Maggie and Travis and John were saying, we were out from 2019. We have been meeting a lot of people. We took all the feedback and we went back to our management, Director Shaw and Transportation Director Jason. And then internally we had this discussion and we even talked to City Council. And what you're seeing right now on the screen is based on that discussion, based on your feedback, like, hey, there are certain things which are missing. Where are we considering equity? Are we considering areas where sidewalks are not present? Are we trying to connect from the sidewalks from one place to another, or are we just looking at one individual block throughout the city? So we took all those into consideration, and we are going to come up with a new construction priority matrix. But one of the key important factors is community engagement. So between April from this year, there will be 12 community engagements, one virtual, one person in each council district. And then we are going to take that feedback and incorporate in this process and come up with a new construction priority matrix. And that will drive the next 1, 5, and 10-year plans starting 2025. There'll be some, like, we have to look into constructability as well, because we want some shovel ready projects as well. So the priority may change, but all these factors will be considered with coming up with the new comprehensive plan. So yourself who have attended the meeting, your friends, your community, we strongly encourage and recommend to join those meetings as well, voice your concerns, because as you see, it is your input will be a major factor in identifying the locations where sidewalk needs to be repaired, put in new sidewalks, but connect one community with another. Next slide, please.
And if I could just add really quick here that we are very excited to have a lot of upcoming opportunities to continue to hear your feedback and your neighbors' feedback. And so tonight is one of those nights, definitely, and we're here to have that discussion. But there also will be these additional chances this summer, spring and summer, to continue the conversation. So we will be posting more information on our avenues at the city about these upcoming meetings, but wanted to give you all just an update here and a preview that this is coming down the pipeline very soon. We're excited to continue the process.
I'm gonna address one of the question. I think Mr. Steve is saying that so the inspection program which we are doing right now is throughout the city. We had to pick a starting point, and based on the priority which was decided earlier, that's where we started. But if you think your neighborhood, your sidewalks needs an inspection, please feel free to reach out to me. We can schedule a meeting and we can walk through and identify the inspections of the sidewalks. And having said that, as I said, our next step is have these 12 meetings, come up with a comprehensive sidewalk plan, and it will be adopted by the city council next year. We will continue our inspections for the next 4 or 5 years, but in the meantime, we'll try to finish the backlog, which is the 311s reported between 2008 and 2016. Next slide, please.
Okay, so while we're here, we're going to switch gears slightly, but this is definitely related to the city's mobility and access goals, and making sure that we have safe and accessible infrastructure for everyone. So we've just got like 2 more slides, and then we'll open it up for ample discussion on everything that we've chatted about this evening. But we wanted to talk just briefly about our Vision Zero initiative and sort of the importance of this work and its relation to pedestrian safety and access and safe infrastructure with sidewalks. So we've had a pretty significant and alarming increase in traffic crashes in Kansas City over the last 10 years. So over the last decade, our fatal crashes have increased 42%. So fatal traffic crashes have increased 42% over the last 10 years. That's extremely alarming. Crashes that have had serious injuries have increased 25% over the last 10 years. So those numbers are pretty concerning to us, to our council members, to our community members. And so about 1.5 years ago, our city council passed an ordinance, a policy called Vision Zero. And that is a sort of a nation international movement to really look at the way that we design and enforce and engage around our streets, making sure that they're safe and accessible for everyone who's using them. So whether you're in a walker, a wheelchair, taking the bus, riding your bike, driving a vehicle, or walking to get where you're going, it really is sort of a holistic look at our transportation system, making sure that we are considering safety at every single corner, literally. And so the things listed on this slide here, I'll kind of walk through it because I know we've got a few folks on the phone here. But our goal is to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries over the next 5 to 10 years. We're looking at several pieces. One of that being very data-driven approach and looking at where are crashes actually happening. Where are we seeing these traffic incidences? Where are areas of concern based on the data, and having that inform where we do safety improvements. We are looking to implement, and I'll talk about that in a second, actual improvements at intersections and on neighborhood streets. And that's something we're hoping to do very quickly with low cost improvements that can really make an impact to make our streets safer as soon as we can. We're also looking at ways to reduce our speed citywide. We hear a lot in neighborhoods about the desire to slow traffic down on neighborhood streets for kids walking to school or for neighbors out walking. That cars drive really fast. And so we're looking at ways to reduce speeds and add traffic calming to our neighborhood streets. Our effort also looks at how do we reduce distracted and impaired driving? Things like people texting on their cell phone when they're driving and the safety concern that comes with that. Looking at how do we engage residents about this work and how important it is. One way is we're trying to tie in this message and this information into meetings like this, because we know that it's very important to have the conversation about safety on our streets and making sure that we're hearing your concerns and aware of areas that we should be looking at in regards to safety on our streets and sidewalks. And then, of course, like everything, data is important in evaluating our improvements. So we're also looking at how do we evaluate this initiative and how do we know that we're successful when we start to look at some of these improvements. A lot of this really, as Therese was speaking about earlier, equity is very important and making sure that we are prioritizing our improvements that will have the biggest impact to the most in need. And so that's something that we're using data, the crash information to really kind of drive some of our improvements this year. So what this involves, like what we're doing with the Vision Zero program, as I mentioned, is pilot projects that are pretty low cost, high impact projects. You can see this photo here is what's called a raised intersection, a raised crosswalk. And so it looks a little bit kind of like a speed bump, but it's actually a crosswalk that's raised a little bit. So it's more visible to vehicles. It's slowing traffic down on this neighborhood street. So that's one small example on the street of a traffic calming project that we did in a couple of years ago. So things like that, we're looking across the city to prioritize some improvements at our highest crash locations, our intersections. So there are several locations we'll be doing improvements this year. We're looking to upgrade some of our traffic signals so that they're safer for pedestrians, giving them a little bit extra time to cross the street. We're looking at adding additional bike facilities that are protected across the city to expand our bike network, making sure that it's protected and safe for cyclists. And then we're also looking at neighborhood traffic calming. So areas like this on this neighborhood street that we can slow traffic down and make it safer for people walking and moving about their neighborhood streets. So this is a pretty big initiative. It's looking at a lot of different pieces. It definitely pertains to the way that we move around our city and making sure that it's safe for everyone who is moving it around Kansas City. And so this is just the very first year that we're doing these projects. We very much intend year after year after year to come back with very similar improvements at different intersections so that we are making sure that all of the streets in Kansas City are safe for everyone using them. So that's sort of the spiel with Vision Zero. I don't know, Uday, if you wanted to add anything more about Vision Zero before we open it up. Oops, you're muted.
Yeah, I think Maggie, you have covered it well. If there are any questions, we would be happy to answer.
Okay. So with that sort of wraps up our formal presentation. But I do believe that the Public Works Director might be on the line. And I just wanted to acknowledge Director Shaw, if he's still here, and see if he wanted to jump in and add anything for the group this evening.
I am here, Maggie. I'm actually walking across the garage. But thank you for everybody for attending, and we look forward to your comments.
Thank you so much. Therese or John, did you want to add anything before we open it up for discussion?
I didn't have anything to add, but I would say this. Before we open broadly to discussion and Q&A, there are already some questions in the chat. So you might want to start there and then take any additional ones. I know Steve had one about his neighborhood and what to do when you have really dangerous areas and it taking a while, with inspections, et cetera, to get to them in terms of improvement. How do we want to tackle that? And there's another question about what to do for neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks right now. or curbs or things like that.
I'll try to address while I'm going through the list of questions. If you want inspections that need to be performed, please feel free to reach out to me. I think I already received an email from Joanne and Steve. I'm going to reach out to you and we'll schedule something and we'll look at your neighborhood. There was some question from Marty. I don't know about the two locations gaps. There is one project which will start this summer on Shoto Trafficway between 46th and 47th. So it will connect the missing piece from the north to the south, where our Parks Department just added sidewalks underneath the bridge. For the second gap, if it is not on the list or the location, you can apply for Payet, or there's a new Rebuild KC grant, which I think the due date is March 22nd. So you may want to apply for that. And the third scenario is, as we are doing the sidewalk comprehensive plan, during community engagement, if you want to talk about that, we will add it to our list. And once we review, we can get back to you. So those are the three avenues you have if a sidewalk is missing or you need new sidewalks. Going over the list, one concern is. I think I addressed Steve's question. Yes, Renee, if I spelled the name right. Yeah, yes, even if you have no sidewalks, curbs, or gutters, it doesn't matter. In the sidewalk comprehensive plan, we are going to consider everything. We are looking at mobility for people from one point to another. And if you don't have sidewalk, that will be still considered. I think I addressed about what are the funding mechanism. I think I have addressed all questions so far in the chat.
So at this point, if folks have additional questions, feel free to keep using the chat. You can also raise your hand. And I know that we have a few folks joined by the phone who don't have access to the chat. So if anyone who's joining by phone would like to chime in with any comment or question, we would love to have you chime in.
And if you are on the phone, you might have to hit *6 to unmute yourself if you're muted.
Looks like we have Marty has his hand raised.
Yes, I'm here. That gap, well, I know along Shoto Trafficway, the reach from 46th to 47th, that was actually the very first reach that was constructed through Payet. There's a 46th Street up to 47th that was constructed. Then I applied for a longer reach, came all the way down from almost up to Vivian, all the way down to 48th Terrace and stopped. That next reach, 48th Terrace down to 47th Terrace, that was supposed to be part of that. And they stopped and never came back, and they pulled the money on us. There's also that gap then from on the other side of Shoto on the east side that goes from 46th Street down to that new sidewalk at the interstate.
Thanks, Marty. I stay corrected. I think that the sidewalk I was referring to is south of 46th Street towards I-35. So that's where on the east side we are going to start construction this summer.
I'll keep my eyes open for you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Does anyone else have a comment or concern or question that they would like to offer?
I have a question.
Go for it, please.
My name's Dave Garrett, and I apologize for getting in a little bit late. So I listened to your presentation before I was able to get on my computer, so I may asked something that was already presented, so I apologize. So the process to, I guess I need to have the sidewalk inspected in my neighborhood first to get on the list. Is that correct? Or what, re-explain the process for this project? Or give me the Cliff Note version, I guess.
The inspection process will continue immaterial of this project. We will, as and when we get information, we are going to incorporate in this process. But let's say you want your sidewalks to be repaired or replaced or new sidewalks. When we have this community engagement meetings, you can reach out to us during those meetings and we will consider that. That's one avenue which we are trying to focus on. The other avenue as of today, which you have available, is Payet. Apply for Payet. Payet is like every year, by August 31st, you can submit applications for Payet. Sidewalks is definitely part of it, new or missing sidewalks or repairs. The other one, which I think it's available only this year, is the Rebuild KC Grants neighborhood, which ends on March 22nd. So you can apply for that as well.
I've applied for PIAC funding for each of the last 4 years and have been denied each year. We get the rejection letter back every time. So I've tried that avenue and have not been successful to this point. I'm not, that's going to work since I've tried that.
Sure, and Payet is a pretty competitive process, so it's definitely one option, but it's not always successful for neighborhoods and residents. So we definitely want to mention it as an option, but we hear what you just described a lot too, that neighborhoods have applied year after year unsuccessfully because it is such a competitive process. What I would say is please do take a look at kcmo.gov/rebuildkc. That info is also in the chat as well. It is a new grant. The application's like 1 page. It's designed to really focus on neighborhood projects that will sort of help with connectivity and create, more vibrant neighborhoods. We do have, we're looking at, I think, about $10 million for that grant project this year. And so there is an open application right now for the next couple of weeks. March 22nd, as Uday said, is the deadline. So that would be for sidewalks or any other sort of neighborhood improvement that your neighborhood's wanting to look at, is definitely an option to pursue. That's a very unique, very timely grant open right now. So we would encourage you to look at that option too.
And Maggie, give me that address again, kcmo.gov. What was what rest of it?
At /rebuild, REBUILDKC. kcmo.gov/rebuildkc, and the application's linked right there. And we purposefully designed the application to be pretty straightforward and easy to apply, knowing that lots of residents and neighborhoods would want to access it. I think we've had close to 300 applications so far, ranging from community improvements to training programs to nuisance abatement. So there's lots of different categories of people asking for improvements in their neighborhood. So definitely want to put a plug in for that resource since it's available right now.
Okay. Thank you, Maggie. And thank you all for facilitating this and hopefully getting it all put together. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we do have about 10 minutes until 7, and we are completely fine to stay here for the next 10 minutes. So please do feel free to chime in if you have additional thoughts, concerns, comments you'd like to share with us today. And yes, as folks decide to pop off the meeting, we just do want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We'll stay on for a few more minutes in case anyone thinks of a last minute question or comment. But we do want to thank everyone for your time this evening. And also please remember that this is recorded. We'll put it on our website. And if you have any other neighbors or friends or family that would like to join the conversation, we're doing a very similar meeting next Tuesday, March 8th, again on March 15th. And then finally, our last one on March 26th. So plenty of opportunities to join the conversation and help us spread the word for sure.
Also, if you were on the phone and you weren't able to let us know if you represent a particular neighborhood association, would you unmute and let us know what that group is so that we can be sure that we capture that?
B2 Williams.
For those that are still on the meeting, if you have any thoughts or ideas about the meeting format, we would love to hear about that as well. If there was anything that we missed or we needed to cover in more depth or an explanation that you needed and didn't get, we would love to have your feedback about the meeting format as well as we look to improve for the next couple meetings coming up.
And if nothing comes to mind, Yuda, I'd like to ask you a question, and maybe Maggie, you might have an answer to this too. With all of the sidewalk conversations that you all have had, what's the most surprising thing that you learned about our sidewalk system?
I'll go first. I think shouldn't have been surprising, but it was, is that sidewalks are a priority in every corner of the neighborhood. It's just such a basic piece of our infrastructure, and it's an important thing. Basic access to sidewalks is so important in every corner of the city. So that'd be one part of it. But the needs for our sidewalk system is very different depending on what part of the city you're in. So as folks described tonight, sometimes there are areas where there were no sidewalks. The neighborhoods were built without sidewalks, without curbs and gutter. In other areas of the town, the center city part, the infrastructure is older, and so it's literally crumbling, or trees are heaving up the sidewalk. So it definitely says to us that our approach needs to be specific and intentional based on the different areas of the city, and that's something that I hope we're looking forward to having that discussion with these public meetings coming up.
Yeah, for me, Trevi, is the magnitude of the problem. I don't think we anticipated we have this big of a problem with all the sidewalks throughout the city, either connectivity or repairs. That's still a shocker, but it is what it is. We need to get started somewhere and we need to fix it.
John, do you have thoughts from the inspection standpoint?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, do you have thoughts about maybe something that surprised you, but from the inspection standpoint? Because you all were out there on segways and others trying to compile data and bring it all together. You're seeing a lot of things firsthand. Is there anything that surprised you about what you saw?
Well, it's something that's always been an issue. Folks that use wheelchairs, a lot of times will prefer to go into the street rather than to try to go down a sidewalk. Because once you get to a sidewalk ramp and you look down the street, you may not be able to tell that there's an issue halfway down that's going to stop you and cause you to go back around. So unfortunately, there's a lot of folks that take their wheelchairs out into the street just because they know that's going to be a smoother surface. So I'm excited about the fact that this program is going to do a lot of sidewalk repairs, and using some of those innovative techniques that Uday talked about, it will really cut down on the cost. Trans Systems, we've done a ton of sidewalk repair programs for cities like Blue Springs and Independence, Kansas. So we've seen, you know, the high end neighborhoods and the low end neighborhoods, and just this wholesale program will be really a godsend.
Thanks, John. We have 4 minutes to go, huh, Maggie?
Yeah, Therese, what, right back at you. What about for you? What's been the biggest surprise?
I think the biggest surprise is how criteria can be used to develop projects and the way that that resonates or does not resonate with community members and the way that they actively get involved. It's not surprising, it's heartening. I think it's awesome in the way that this is really important for people. It's in my neighborhood, we have sidewalks, but today I was in the center of the city and I was walking and the sidewalks ran out. And we were at a location that is meant to draw people. The crossings were crazy. There were a lot of things that looking at an aerial photo, driving by it, you're not going to have the experience. It just really drove home the importance of sidewalks. Also, the importance associated with just having a well-kept community and a well-kept routes, not having trash along the route that you're walking on, in addition to having the sidewalk. And then what happens if you're walking and you're on the edge of something? Is there a retaining wall there or not? Things like that. And so I know that people are really interested in this and it's really awesome to work on it. But some of those things can be surprising, but I think it's a really good surprise. It can be a good surprise. The level of interest that projects like this draw.
Well, with that, we're at 6:58. I think I will officially close out the meeting for the purposes of the recording. Thanks again to everyone who joined us this evening for a great discussion. We appreciate everyone's feedback and comments and concerns, and just an overall great meeting, and appreciate everyone's willingness to listen and contribute. So next up is the meeting on March 8th, next Tuesday. We're looking forward to it. Thank you, and please do feel free to reach out for any additional questions. Thank you.